Hello there, and welcome. I'm your host Ben, and tonight we invite you on a slow and gentle journey back through time. Imagine yourself aboard an English sailing ship in the 17th century. The year isn't important, only that you are far out at sea, living the daily life of a sailor. Allow the present to fade away as you become this weary sailor, letting the soft rhythms of a ship at sea carry you towards sleep. All around you is the vast, calm ocean. Overhead, tall wooden masts sway ever so slightly. The air smells of salt and old oak timbers, with a faint hint of tar. In this story, you are the sailor, experiencing a typical day in the 1600s, a day filled with simple routines and quiet moments. It's a boring sort of day, in a good way, the kind of ordinary, gentle day that makes for peaceful nights. So make yourself comfortable, close your eyes, and step on deck into the past. Our journey begins in the early morning, just before the first light of dawn. You are asleep in your hammock when the day slowly begins. It's still dark, and the ship gently rocks you as you rest. The canvas hammock sways with each movement of the vessel, cradling you so that you hardly notice the ship's motion. All around, you hear the soft creaking of wood from the hull and masts. The ocean's hush is broken only by the occasional muffled footstep on deck and the distant splash of a wave. In the dim lantern glow below decks, dozens of your crewmates also lie in their hammocks, swaying and snoring softly. The air is cool and a bit damp before sunrise. You pull a thin blanket or your coat a little tighter around you, savoring these last moments of rest. Life aboard ship follows a strict schedule. The crew takes turns working in shifts, known as watches. Like most sailors, you are part of one of two large watch groups, traditionally called the port and starboard watches, that rotate duties day and night. While half the crew works, the other half rests. Throughout the night, some of your shipmates have been awake on the middle watch, midnight to 4 a.m., keeping the ship on course and handling any needs in the dark hours. You were fortunate to be off duty then, able to sleep, but now dawn is near. It's about 4 a.m., and the morning watch is beginning. Time for you and your fellow sailors to rise and take your turn. A single bell strikes up on deck, then one more, 4 bells in total, meaning it is now 4 a.m. in the morning. The faint sound of the ship's bell filters down to your ears, a familiar signal that the night watch is ending and a new day is starting. You hear the boatswain's pipe, a high-pitched whistle, cutting through the dawn. Its notes a gentle but firm call to wake up. In the twilight below deck, figures stir as the men groggily climb out of their swaying beds. You yawn, stretch your stiff limbs, and carefully step onto the deck as your hammock swings. It would not do to be too slow. The bosun boatswain might decide to hurry along any stragglers. On some ships, they even resort to more, shall we say, direct methods, a shout of "show a leg," or a playful thwack with a rope's end for the especially sleepy sailors. But this morning, everyone is obediently rising, albeit with bleary eyes. You deftly unlashing your hammock, roll it up tight, and stow it away in the netting along the ship's rail above, as required each morning. The crew keeps their bedding neatly packed to clear the decks for the day. Stowing your hammock also has another benefit. During battle, hammocks rolled in netting along the bulwarks can provide a bit of extra protection, though you're certainly hoping this remains a peaceful day at sea. For now, the biggest battle is with the urge to go back to sleep. But there's no time for that. The first light of dawn is seeping in, pale and grey, through an open hatch. Up on deck, the morning watch sailors are already bustling about, and you must join them. Climbing up the ladder, you emerge onto the main deck and inhale the cool morning air. Dawn is breaking over the endless water. The eastern horizon glows with streaks of pearly light. A few stars still twinkle overhead, gradually fading as the sky grows lighter. The ship gently pitches under your feet, but you're well used to keeping your balance. All around, the vessel is coming to life. The officer of the watch, likely a lieutenant, greets the day and barks a few low orders. The boatswain and his mates are preparing the crew for the first chore of the morning. And what a familiar chore it is, cleaning the ship. In the 17th century, and indeed in every age of sail, keeping the vessel clean is a daily ritual. Barely awake, you and the rest of the watch get to work without any fuss. Buckets are already being filled with seawater using ropes, or the ship's pump is brought into action to draw water from the ocean. In the growing dawn light, you grab a holy stone, a chunk of soft sandstone, and get down on hands and knees alongside your shipmates. Together, you begin scrubbing the wooden deck planks methodically. This is literally holy stoning the deck. nicknamed so because one must kneel as if in prayer while scrubbing. Back and forth you scour the boards with the sand-soaked stone, grinding away yesterday's dirt and spills. A couple of fellow sailors toss sand across the wet planks to aid the abrasive action. It's hard work, but the repetitive motion and the sound of the stone sliding on wood become almost meditative after a while. Sweep, scrub, rinse. Slowly, patches of the deck regain a clean, pale hue. This daily scrubbing keeps the grime at bay and also satisfies the captain's insistence on a smart ship. Many captains believe a clean ship is a healthy and orderly one, and so every morning, without fail, you scrub. It might not be the most thrilling task, but a bit of mild, monotonous labor is not so bad. In fact, many sailors joke that a boring day is a blessing. It means nothing terrible, like a storm or battle is happening. A quiet chuckle escapes you as you think about that. Boring is good. So you keep scrubbing peacefully, watching the pale soapy water sluice across the deck and trickle out the scuppers back to the sea. The ship's cat, already awake, hops out of the way of the water with an indignant meow. Yes, there's a cat on board, a fat tabby that earns its keep chasing rats. Now it sits atop a coil of rope, licking a paw and supervising your cleaning efforts with regal detachment. A few chickens cluck from their coop on the deck as well, and somewhere a goat bleats softly. The ship carries a little livestock, hens for eggs, maybe a goat for milk, and you can hear the cook's mates already feeding them, scattering some grain for the birds and making sure the animals are secure for the day. Their gentle noises add to the peaceful morning chorus. By the time the sun peaks over the horizon, the deck is fresh and clean. You and your fellow early risers finish the holy stoning, then use long swabs, mops, to splash clean water and rinse off the sand and grit. Together, you heave buckets, sloshing seawater across the timbers, then sweep the liquid off with brooms and squeegees, which some sailors call squilgees. A cool mist of salty water sprays your ankles as you work. The ship's timbers, made of sturdy pine, almost seem to glow in the new sunlight as they dry to a pale cream color from all the scrubbing. You can smell the fresh salt water and a faint scent of sand and stone dust. It's strangely refreshing. Now the worst of the core is done. You wring out your mop and coil up the ropes, storing the holy stones back in their box. If the captain is especially fussy, sometimes he'll have the decks wiped down with vinegar to disinfect them. But today that sharp aroma is thankfully absent. Plain seawater does the job. You straighten up and stretch, easing your back after stooping for so long. The sun is now just above the horizon, a soft golden disk in the morning haze. Sunbeams slant across the deck, revealing a few whirls and knots in the wood that even the holy stone couldn't whiten. But overall, the deck looks shipshape. One of the officers nods in approval. It's around 6 or 7 a.m. now, and the ship truly comes alive as the full crew prepares for the day. The other half of the crew, those who are sleeping a bit longer, are all up by now. The boatswain's pipe has made sure of that. They too have rolled up their hammocks and tidied their berths. Bleary-eyed sailors emerge from below, blinking at the daylight. You see one friend of yours shuffling along, still tugging on his coarse woolen shirt, trying to shake off sleep. He gives you a little grin that says, "Another day, here we go." You grin back. There's no need for words. You both know the routine. All of you, about 100 men on a typical ship, more on a big Navy man of war, fewer on a small merchant bark, are now assembled in one way or another, ready for whatever the day brings. Before breakfast, there are usually a few more duties and checks. You might coil up any loose ropes on deck neatly, so no one trips. Perhaps you help haul on a line to adjust a sail as the morning wind shifts. With the sun rising, the breeze often changes, and the officer of the watch gives the order to trim the sails. Together, you and a team tail a rope, bracing a yard and tightening the sheets so the canvas catches the wind just right. The sails above fill gently, and the ship leans ever so slightly as it gains a touch of speed. Overhead, white canvas gleams in the fresh sunlight. High in the rigging, a topman is already agilely climbing to check for any frayed lines or loose ties aloft. The rigging must be in good shape. From the quarterdeck, the navigator takes a quick morning sight of the sun, or a star fading in the dawn, just to double-check the ship's course. Every half hour, a ship's boy or a mate turns the hourglass and strikes the ship's bell to mark the time. A single bell for each half hour of the watch, up to 8 bells for a full 4 hours. These soft bell chimes have been ringing out on the half hour all through the night, and will continue through the day, like the ship's heartbeat keeping everyone regulated. As you coil a line, you hear 7 bells ring, 7:30 a.m., on the bell. Nearly time for breakfast. Your stomach agrees, growling faintly. The enticing smell of something cooking starts wafting from the galley, the ship's kitchen down below. After a morning of exertion scrubbing decks, your appetite is well earned. At last, 8 bells sound, 8 a.m. by the ship's time, and the call goes out. Breakfast for the crew. The bosun's whistle trills a happy tune, a much friendlier sound than it was at dawn. You exchange a brief, relieved glance with your crewmates. It's time to eat. You all shuffle toward the hatch that leads below to the mess deck, eager for the first meal of the day. On a ship, meals are humble but vital events, moments that break up the long hours of work. You file down into the dim interior where the smell of hot food grows stronger. It's a good smell, or at least to a hungry sailor it is. Breakfast in the 17th century at sea is no grand affair, but it's warm and filling. This morning, the ship's cook has made a cauldron of hot porridge, rich and thick. The cook, often an older sailor missing a finger or two, occupational hazard of working near swinging pots in rough seas, stands guard by the great iron kettle. He grunts and serves each man a scoop of the viscous oatmeal into their bowl or tin. The porridge is bulked up with a bit of portable soup, a sort of concentrated beef broth, giving it a slightly meaty flavor. If we're lucky, the cook might have thrown in some scurvy grass or onions, any scrap of vegetable available, to lend a hint of freshness and ward off illness. You cradle the warm bowl in your rough hands and inhale the steam. It's plain, but it's hot, and that's a comfort. Alongside, you receive your daily allowance of ship's bread, the infamous hardtack biscuit. It's a palm-sized cracker of flour and water baked rock hard, hence its nickname hardtack. You tap it on the edge of your bowl just to test its solidity, and sure enough, it's like knocking on wood. Many a sailor has cracked a tooth on these biscuits, which is why some prefer to soak them in the porridge or in their drink to soften them. You're grateful for the porridge because it means you won't have to gnaw the biscuit dry. With a little chuckle, you recall a joke among sailors that these biscuits are so hard and long-lasting, you could build a fort out of them, or use them as ammunition. Indeed, hardtack could be years old by the time you eat it. Sometimes they are too old, often infested with weevils. You've grown used to the idea that your bread might include a few tiny worms or beetles. This morning, you casually tap your biscuit on the table to knock any critters out, an old habit, as the biscuits often host unwanted extras in the form of insects. A couple of weevils fall out, and you flick them away without a second thought. Extra protein, as your mates would joke. It's all part of the sailor's life. You soften the biscuit in your porridge, letting it soak like a makeshift spoon, then take a bite. It's bland and very chewy, but it fills the belly. To wash it down, you take a swig of ale from your tin cup. Yes, ale, even at breakfast. The ship carries casks of beer or ale as the main beverage, since fresh water doesn't keep well on long voyages. The ale is weak, quite diluted and low in alcohol, but it's safer and more palatable than brackish water from the barrels. Each sailor is allowed about a gallon of this weak beer a day, issued in rations. So with breakfast, you happily gulp a bit. It's actually refreshing after the morning's work, cool and only mildly alcoholic. Drinking beer in the morning might sound odd to someone from the 21st century, but at sea in the 1600s it's perfectly normal. Don't worry, you won't be getting drunk. The stuff is about as weak as small beer can be, just enough to keep you hydrated. Besides, a touch of malt taste goes well with the porridge. You sit on a sea chest or an upturned bucket with your messmates, the small group of crew you share your meals with. Ships are organized into messes, usually of about 4-6 men, who eat and socialize together. It's a cozy little fellowship amid the larger crew. As you eat, you trade a few quiet jokes with them. One lanky sailor, chewing laboriously on his hard biscuit, rolls his eyes and mutters with dry humor. Ah, nothing like breakfast on the ocean wave. Today's menu, yesterday's oats, and last year's biscuit with a side of weevil. You chuckle softly, careful not to spit your mouthful of porridge. Another friend responds, "Aye, but at least the porridge is hot." Warms your innards better than a kiss from a mermaid. The small group laughs quietly. The mood is relaxed here below decks, with everyone savoring their brief respite. The lantern light flickers on smiling, weathered faces. For a little while, you can almost imagine you're all just farmers having a morning meal in a barn, rather than sailors in the middle of a vast ocean. Breakfast does not last very long, perhaps half an hour in total. The schedule is strict after all. As the last of the porridge is scraped from bowls, you drain the remainder of your ale. Some men dunk their biscuits into the ale, or a bit of broth to soften them, and then gulp them down. A few particularly hungry fellows even go around scrounging for any leftovers. You don't waste a single crumb of that hardtack. Food is precious out here, and rations are measured. The cook's assistants already begin hauling the heavy cauldron away and cleaning up, preparing for the next meal's preparations. You feel content, with a warm fullness in your belly, even if the meal was simple. Wiping your mouth with the back of your hand, you carry your bowl to be rinsed. Then, at the sound of one bell, it's now 8:30 a.m., the officer of the watch calls the crew back to duty. Breakfast time is over. It's time to get on with the day's work. You sigh softly, a mix of reluctance to leave the comfort of the mess and acceptance of the inevitable. One more swallow of the cool morning air, and you climb back up to the main deck with your mates. Now the sun is well above the horizon, shining bright on the sails. The morning is clear and calm. The ship is sailing steadily under a fair breeze. It's shaping up to be a fine day. No dark clouds in sight, just pale blue sky and a wide, gentle ocean around you. In all directions the sea stretches out, its surface rippling like silk, with an occasional white cap as the wind catches a wave. The ship's wake froths softly behind us, a white trail in the blue. You take a moment to breathe in the salt air deeply. It's invigorating. These quiet moments, when the weather is kind, are some of the few pleasures of life at sea. The forenoon watch, 8 a.m. to noon, is now underway, and you resume your duties. On an English ship in the 1600s, sailors' tasks vary throughout the day, keeping everyone busy. Idleness breeds mischief, the officers say, so there is almost always something to do. You find yourself assigned to the ship's helm for a while, a responsibility you rather enjoy, taking the great whipstaff or wheel, depending on the ship's design. Early 17th century ships might still have a whipstaff tiller, while later ones have the classic wheel. You plant your feet and gently steer under the quartermaster's supervision. The feeling of guiding the ship is almost empowering in its quiet way. With slight movements, you keep the ship on her compass course, using the sun and the wind as your guides. The ship's compass is mounted before you, its needle steady, and the morning sun casts long shadows on the deck as you keep the bow aimed true. The hull creaks and the rudder responds to your touch. From this position, you have a fine view forward, the deck stretching out with sailors dotting it, the bow cutting through the sea ahead. It's peaceful, almost lulling, as you concentrate on the horizon and the heading. A ship's boy stands nearby, turning the half-hour sand glass when needed and ringing the bell, but otherwise, all is quiet except for the wind's low hum in the rigging. After your spell at the helm, another crewmate relieves you. Everyone rotates duties to stay alert. Next, you might go aloft as a lookout. You climb the ratlines, the rope ladders netted up the mast, with practiced ease, harnessing yourself with a bit of rope. Up, hand over hand, step by step, you ascend to the masthead platform, or even the crow's nest. The ship shrinks below you as you reach a high perch on the foremast. Up here, the sea breeze is stronger, flapping your loose hair and cooling your sweaty brow. The vista is incredible, a full 360-degree panorama of the open ocean. Your job is to scan the horizon for anything of interest, a ship's sail perhaps, or distant land, or hazards like floating debris. This morning, all you see is the endless meeting of sea and sky, a perfect blue dome over a blue plain. Maybe, just maybe, on the very edge of sight, there's a speck. Could be another ship catching the morning light far away. You peer intently, one hand shielding your eyes. It's hard to tell. It might just be a cloud on the water's edge. You decide it's nothing urgent and continue your slow, careful sweep around. Gulls occasionally wheel in the air, squawking. One such seabird passes not far from you, and you wonder if it's a sign that land is somewhere beyond the horizon, since gulls often stay closer to shores. But here, it probably just means there's a school of fish below, and the bird is hunting breakfast. Satisfied that no dangers or noteworthy sights are around, you eventually climb back down, reporting all clear to the officer on deck. Being on lookout duty is a nice break. It's quieter up there, almost solitary, and you had a few minutes to simply gaze at the beauty of the sea. Back on deck, other sailors are occupied with their own tasks. A few are busy at the bow, working the pumps, an unavoidable daily chore. Throughout any given day, a bit of seawater seeps into the ship's hull, between planks or through tiny cracks. This water collects at the lowest compartment, called the bilge, and it must be pumped out regularly to keep the ship from accumulating too much weight and stinking water below. So 2 men take turns at the pump handle, seesawing it up and down. With each rhythmic pump, a spout of brackish water splashes out overboard. The steady clank, hiss, clank, hiss of the pump is a familiar sound, usually done at least once a day. Not the most pleasant task. The bilge water smells of moldy wood, salt, and maybe a hint of rotting things, but everyone takes their turn. Today, others are handling it, so you're spared the smell, at least for now. Still, the thought crosses your mind that you're grateful for the fresh salt breeze up on deck. Elsewhere, the ship's gunners are going about their morning maintenance too, even though this is a peaceful day. No enemy in sight, and hopefully none will appear. The guns must be cared for. Along the gun deck, a couple of gunners' mates methodically work one of the cannon back and forth in its wooden carriage, checking the wheels and breechings. They swab out any residue from yesterday's practice or previous shots, and ensure the powder magazine is secure. On a Navy ship or an armed merchantman, this ritual is vital. You never know when you might need those cannons ready. The iron cannons, silent now, look almost gentle as the men lightly oil their metal surfaces to prevent rust. Above on deck, the boatswain, bosun, is supervising some sailors in charge of the sails and rigging. A topsail needed a minor repair where a seam was starting to split. The sailmaker of the ship, a man with palm and needle, sits comfortably on the deck, with the heavy canvas spread out in front of him. Using a large curved needle and waxed twine, he stitches a patch carefully, repairing the sail. Every so often he pushes the needle through the thick canvas with a leather palm guard. It's a quiet, focused task, and rather therapeutic to watch. Others are busy splicing rope, where a line has started fraying. Cordage constantly needs tending, as the ship carries miles of ropes for all the sails. You see a young apprentice carefully unlaying a frayed rope's ends, and weaving them back together with a fid, a wooden spike to strengthen a weak section. Another old salt next to him ties a new knot, and practices an old one, perhaps teaching the younger sailor a trick or two about securing cargo, or rigging a pulley. These are the routines that keep the ship in good order. Each man has his specialty. The carpenter might be below decks checking the hull's timbers, or fixing a creaky bulkhead. The cooper, if one is aboard, will be examining water barrels for leaks. The cook is already thinking ahead to dinner preparations. It truly is like a floating little city, with everyone contributing their trade. Around mid-morning, the officer of the watch conducts a quick inspection. He walks the decks, noting the clean planks, the coiled ropes, the men at their stations. He calls up to the masthead to ensure the lookout is attentive. If you're up there, you'd shout a polite acknowledgement. He may ask the sailmaker how the repair is coming, or speak with the quartermaster about the course and any changes in the wind. This isn't a full dress inspection. Those usually happen perhaps once a week or before entering port, but even on an ordinary day, discipline is maintained. The officer's presence keeps everyone on their toes. Still, it's a relatively relaxed morning given the fine weather. You continue with various small tasks as needed, perhaps lending a hand to the carpenter for a bit. He's mixing up some tar in a pot to reseal part of the deck seam. The sticky black tar smells pungent and piney. You hold a plank steady as he daubs the hot tar along a crack, then you both hammer the plank back in place. Satisfied, you wipe a bit of stray tar off your sleeve. Accidentally got some on you, an ever-present hazard on a ship. That tar stain likely won't ever fully come out of your coarse canvas work shirt, but then again, your clothes are all rather patched and stained already. Sailors' garments are utilitarian, meant for hard wear, and you'll likely be mending them yourself come evening. As the sun climbs toward its zenith, the heat increases. If the ship is in tropical or summer climes, by late morning, the sunshine can be quite strong. On deck, a few of the fellows start sweating through their loose shirts. Someone pulls out a broad-brimmed hat or ties a rag around his head to keep the sun off. If it were a particularly scorching day, the crew might rig an awning for some shade on the quarterdeck, a canvas tarp to block the worst of the sun. Today, it's warm but not unbearable. You take a swig from your scuttlebutt, a wooden cask of drink that's kept accessible with fresh, well, relatively fresh water or diluted beer. The word scuttlebutt in sailor slang refers to both the water barrel and the gossip exchanged around it. True to form, a couple of shipmates linger near the water barrel, muttering and chuckling about some rumor, perhaps speculating how long until the next port, or telling a harmless yarn about the first mate. You smile at them as you wipe your mouth. Even on a disciplined ship, sailors find moments to chat quietly and share a joke or two. Then a welcome sound rises above the creak and din. 8 bells are struck once more, this time indicating noon. It is now 12 p.m., and that means several things. Firstly, the forenoon watch is over, and the afternoon watch begins. But just as importantly, 8 bells at noon is traditionally the time for the ship's main meal, dinner. Yes, in this era they call the midday meal dinner, and the evening meal supper, or simply tea or rum supper, depending on what's served. It can be a bit confusing to modern minds, but that's the custom. Another interesting tradition happens at noon. Aboard ship, the new day officially begins at this time by the old nautical custom. In fact, the ship's date changes at noon, not at midnight. The officers determine when it's exactly local noon by observing the sun's highest point in the sky. Often the sailing master or navigator will take out his cross staff or sextant and measure the sun's altitude when it seems to stop climbing. Once he's satisfied, he might announce it or simply note it. In the age of sail, many ships would start the day at noon in their logs. It's a quirky tradition of seafaring life. Noon is when yesterday officially ends and today begins, at least on the pages of the logbook. And conveniently, that's when dinner is served, giving the crew a clear signal of the new day's start. So, as the 8 bells fade away, you know 2 things for sure. The sun is at its zenith, and you're about to get fed. Both are very welcome. The call goes out. Dinner's served. The cook and his mates have been working through the morning to prepare the meal. In those early hours while you were busy above, they've been down in the ship's galley, a small iron stove area usually set on a sandpit or bricks to prevent the wooden ship from catching fire. Fire at sea is one of the worst dangers, so the galley is treated with great caution. With minimal ingredients and a lot of ingenuity, the cook manages to produce something sustaining each day. Today's dinner is the standard fare, a stew or porridge of salted meat and peas. The smell of it wafts through the lower decks, rich, salty, a bit funky, but oddly appetizing when you're truly hungry. The meat is likely salt beef that's been soaking since last night. On warships and long voyages, the meat is heavily salted to preserve it, packed in barrels in brine. Before cooking, it's often soaked for many hours to draw out some of the salt, otherwise it would be practically inedible. The cook started soaking last night, changing the water several times. By now, the brined beef has softened and swelled a bit, though it remains quite salty and tough. In the late morning, the meat was tossed into the boiling copper, the big cooking pot, with whatever dried peas or grains are allocated. Likely you have a pea soup or a stew of beef and peas. As you line up with your messmates, holding your wooden bowl or mess kid, you can see the cook's helpers hauling up the heavy tub of meat from the steep tub where it's soaked. The meat is then chopped and thrown into the pot. Now the meal is ready. One by one, each mess group sends a mess cook, one man from each small group, to fetch the food. It's ladled out into buckets or large bowls, which 2 men carefully carry, navigating the rolling deck to bring it to their mates waiting in the mess area. Your mess's cook returns triumphantly, with a steaming bucket of beef stew. The smell hits you. Salty beef, a bit of fat, maybe some onion or herbs if any were available. Often not, but sometimes there might be a bit of thyme or garlic if the purser saved some. There's also the earthy aroma of cooked dried peas. It's a thick concoction, not gourmet by any means, but nourishing. Your portion is doled out, and you sit down with your group to eat. You spear a chunk of beef with your clasp knife. It's dark brown and fibrous. You give it a test chew. As expected, it's on the leathery side. The months of preservation have robbed it of tenderness. Salt beef in those days could be so tough that sailors joked it was as hard as the devil's hoof. Sometimes they called it old horse, perhaps because of the texture, and one prays it's not literally horse. But hunger is the best sauce, and you chew diligently. It's very salty, but after the bland breakfast, the strong flavor is actually welcome. You have some hard biscuit left from earlier. Sailors often save part of their daily bread to crumble into the stew as a thickener. You crumble your remaining biscuit over the bowl. It softens and absorbs the gravy, making the last bits easier to scoop. Alongside the meat and peas, there might be a bit of cheese issued, or a bit of butter to mix in. The rations usually include a little of those each week. Today maybe you each get a small lump of pale cheese. It's well aged, perhaps a kind word for on the verge of rancid, but a treat nonetheless. You pop it into your mouth with a smile. It's sharp and oily, but it's dairy, a change from meat and biscuit. As you eat, you recall what the standard rations are on board. Basically the same every day with minor variation. Salted beef, or on some days salt pork, is your protein. Ship's biscuit is your filler. Dried peas or oatmeal might make a soup. Cheese and butter appear in small amounts, and of course some form of beer or spirits to drink. The food is far from fresh. Almost everything is preserved in salt or dried. Fresh fruits or vegetables are almost never seen unless you've just left port, or are very lucky, or if the ship's captain is enlightened and brought sauerkraut or malt or something to fight scurvy. Fresh meat is rare too, except maybe when you first depart, or if you catch some fish. In fact, occasionally the crew does catch fish. Lines or nets overboard might bring up some fish or a turtle if in warm seas. Those are small windfalls that everyone relishes. Some ships also carry live animals initially. A few chickens, we heard them clucking this morning. Maybe a pig or two, all intended to be eaten eventually. But these animals don't thrive long at sea with the rocking and limited fodder, so mostly you rely on the salted and dried provisions that can last months. By now, after weeks at sea, you've grown accustomed to the taste. The main rations of salt beef or pork, ship's biscuit, dried peas, and maybe a bit of dried fish on some days, or oatmeal porridge, that's your menu. It might sound meager and repetitive, but in truth, these rations are often better than what poorer folk eat on land in this era. Out here, you're guaranteed a certain amount of calories each day. In fact, some sailors even put on a bit of weight during long voyages, ironically because they have regular meals, albeit not very appetizing ones. As you spoon up the last of your pea soup, you reflect that at least you'll never starve on this ship, even if you might not exactly savor every meal. And every now and then there are small delights. Once a week, perhaps on Sundays, the cook makes a treat, a plum duff, or raisin pudding boiled in cloth, a little dessert to lift spirits. You smile thinking of that. You definitely look forward to pudding day. Sweetness is a rare pleasure at sea. To wash down dinner, the liquor ration is now given out. By the late 17th century, in the Royal Navy and many ships, this would be grog or straight rum in certain quantities, especially in warm climates where beer spoiled. Earlier in the century, it might be wine or brandy on some ships, depending on what region you're sailing. On an East India Company ship or Royal Navy vessel of this era, likely rum has become common. After England's acquisition of Caribbean colonies, rum was plentiful. In fact, from about mid-1600s onward, sailors in the West Indies trade got rum. If we are in earlier 1600s or on a shorter voyage, you might still have beer or ale for a while. Let's imagine on this voyage, you have a bit of everything. Some barrels of beer from England, maybe wine acquired at a port call, and rum as well. Today, the quartermaster unlocks the spirit stores and brings out the ration of rum to mix with water, creating what in a later age would be called grog. Though that term officially comes later, the practice is there. The men line up with their tin cups. You receive your portion, perhaps half a pint of rum for the day, which might be mixed with water and split into 2 servings. Sailors sometimes hoard their ration to drink all at once for a nice buzz, but on a calm day like this, most just take it as given. You sip from your cup. The rum, even watered, burns a little going down. It's strong stuff, distilled from sugarcane. It warms your belly and makes you momentarily lightheaded. Up spirits is the jovial call that usually accompanies the doling out of rum. It certainly lifts your spirit. If it were beer, you'd just continue sipping that with your meal. If wine, you'd perhaps dilute it. In any case, alcohol is part of your life at sea. It keeps the water safer to drink and provides a small comfort in routine. As one naval tradition goes, the sun is over the yardarm around noon, meaning it's socially acceptable to have your drink now. And indeed, as you lean back and take another swig, the sun hovering above casts the shadow of the yardarm, the horizontal spar holding the sails, somewhere on deck, a sailor's informal signal that it's time for a nip of rum. After eating, the crew has a short period of rest. Typically, the men are allowed about an hour to relax after dinner. You truly appreciate this pause. All around, sailors sprawl out on the deck or find a shady spot to lounge. Some take the opportunity to smoke a pipe of tobacco, gently puffing and sending wisps of fragrant smoke into the air. You might pull out a pipe yourself if you have one, and share some tobacco with a friend. Smoking is one of the few leisure activities available, and it gives a sense of calm as you reflect on the day. A few of the older tars lean against the bulwarks, faces creased in bliss as they exhale clouds of smoke and perhaps think of home. Other sailors use the time to mend their clothes or sew patches on their worn trousers, a never-ending task given the wear and tear of ship work. You notice one fellow darning a sock, another carefully stitching a ripped seam on his canvas slops, pants. Sailors often carry a needle and some thread for just this purpose. The ship's sunlight, coming from above through hatchways, provides enough illumination for these small tasks. Not everyone is idle though. The ship's boys and some idlers, crew, who are not on watch like the cook, steward, etc., might be tidying up the mess from dinner, collecting the empty kids, containers, and swabbing the mess deck. But you've done your part cleaning earlier, so now you lean against a coil of rope, hat tipped over your eyes, and maybe catch a quick nap. Many sailors master the art of catnapping, sleeping in short snatches whenever they can, since the watch system means you never know when you'll be up at odd hours. With your stomach full and the sound of waves gently lapping the hull, you find your eyelids growing heavy. The sun, now high and strong, makes the air below decks quite warm, almost like a lullaby of heat. You allow yourself to drift off for a few minutes, the voices of your mates and the ambient ship noises blending into a murmur. It's a luxury to have these few minutes of dozing. In your mind, scenes of green English fields or the face of a loved one might float by, dreams of home that visit in brief respite. If you're on a particularly long voyage, perhaps you dream of land itself, of trees that don't sway, and a ground that doesn't tilt. But soon enough, a shout or a footstep nearby rouses you. Break time is nearly over. The ship's bell rings out again. 1 bell, 2 bells. It's 1 p.m., 2 bells, into the afternoon watch. Time to get back to work. The sun has begun its slow westward descent, but there are many hours of daylight left. The afternoon watch, noon to 4 p.m., is often a time for heavier labor or routine drills. On some days, especially on a Navy vessel, the afternoon might include exercises, perhaps a gun drill, where the crew practices running out the cannons, loading and firing, without shot, to keep in good fighting shape. But today, being a calm, normal day, the captain forgoes any loud drills, no need to disturb the peace, and your nap, with cannon fire practice. Instead, the focus is on maintenance, and maybe a bit of training in seamanship. One chore that often falls in the afternoon is tending to the sails and rigging more thoroughly. You might be sent aloft again, this time with a purpose, inspecting the shrouds and stays, the supporting ropes and cables for the masts. Armed with a marlin spike and some tarred hemp yarn, called oakum, you check each line for chafing. Whenever you find a weak spot, you perform a repair called serving, wrapping the rope tightly with spun yarn, often with a coating of tar to protect it. As you wrap the rope, the sticky tar smells strong, but you've grown to find it almost comforting. It's the smell of a well-kept ship. Black tar stains your fingers, and probably your shirt again, but that's normal. Bit by bit, you ensure the rigging will hold under strain. This preventative work might save a mast in a storm someday, so you take pride in doing it properly. Down on deck, others are busy with different tasks. The carpenter, a stout, practical man everyone calls Chips, might be down in the hold, checking the hull for any sign of leaks or weak timbers. If he's found something troubling, you'd hear the ring of his hammer installing a reinforcing plank, or driving in fresh oakum and tar between hull planks, a process called caulking. Perhaps he's even been inspecting the pump mechanism to ensure it's working smoothly, a critical thing if weather turns. Meanwhile, the quartermasters are at the helm, keeping the ship steady on course, and the navigator is recording the ship's position in the logbook, using the noon sight he took. He calculated the latitude from the sun's height, an important daily task to know where on earth you are. There's a bit of mathematics and reference to astronomical tables going on at the captain's desk right now. You might not be directly involved in that, but it gives a reassuring sense that someone knows where we're headed. If the weather permitted a good sighting, by afternoon the captain or master will announce the day's run, how far the ship has traveled, and how far to go. If you're on an exploring voyage, perhaps they gather officers to update charts and discuss what's ahead. If it's a merchant or naval ship on a known route, they might just mark the position. Either way, it doesn't immediately affect your work. You just keep the ship sailing as directed. But it's part of the daily rhythm. Every day at noon, find our place in the world. That thought has a poetic ring to it, as you smear tar on a rope under the bright sky. Here you are, a tiny speck on the ocean, pinpointing your location by the grace of the sun and stars. Suddenly, a call comes from aloft. The lookout has spotted something. "Sail ho," comes the cry from the masthead. Your ears perk up. A sail, friend or foe, merchant or naval, one never knows at first. The officer of the watch springs into action, lifting his spyglass to survey the horizon. All the men pause in their tasks, a ripple of excitement and maybe nervousness going through them. You shield your eyes and gaze out. Yes, there, a tiny white triangle against the blue, far on the edge of sight. It could be another ship on a parallel course or crossing paths miles away. There's no immediate alarm. It's too distant to tell if it's a potential threat. Likely just another traveler on the King's Highway of the seas. The officer decides it's not an immediate concern. Perhaps it's even sailing away from us. So, after a few minutes of speculation, the crew returns to their duties. Still, for that brief time, you all had a spark of variety in the day. A topic for gossip at least. Who do you reckon that was? A Dutch merchantman maybe, or one of our escorts. Hard to say. Hull down, could be anything. The gossip or scuttlebutt talk will carry on quietly among the men for a while, as minor sightings become a source of interest in the otherwise featureless expanse of ocean. But soon enough, the mystery ship vanishes on the horizon, and with it, your thoughts drift back to the work at hand. As afternoon wears on, the sun starts to angle lower and the heat diminishes slightly. If it's a warm region, this is a great relief. You feel the day's sweat drying on your skin as a cooler breeze picks up. If it's colder latitudes, the evenings can actually get quite chilly, and you'd welcome wrapping in a jacket. For now, let's assume it's a mild climate day. You pause to take a drink of water to stay hydrated. The taste isn't wonderful. The water from the cask is a bit stale, perhaps with a woody tang, but it's wet. You swish it in your mouth to chase away the salty aftertaste of that noon meal. At around 4 p.m., it's time for a change in the watch. 8 bells ring out yet again, marking 4 hours since noon. The afternoon watch ends, and the first dog watch begins. The dog watches are 2 short watches from 4 to 6 p.m. and 6 to 8 p.m., introduced into the schedule to adjust the rotation. These 2-hour watches dog the normal watch pattern, preventing the same men from having to stand the same time watch every day. It's a clever system. By splitting one watch period into 2 smaller ones, the crew's schedule is offset, and you don't have, say, the same group always stuck with the miserable midnight watch. It evens out over days. Another reason often cited in law is that it allows everyone some time for the evening meal. With dog watches, half the crew eats around 5 p.m. and the other half around 6 p.m., so everyone gets a chance to have supper without leaving the ship undermanned. Right now, at 4 o'clock, the first dog watch commences. If you were on duty since noon, perhaps now you're relieved by others, or vice versa. Let's say you are now off duty for a bit, thanks to a rotation. You've labored since morning, with only the meal break, so this is a welcome respite. The sun is heading toward the horizon, and the quality of light turns gentle and golden. It's that beautiful late afternoon glow at sea, when the waves, now tinged with orange, look less harsh, and the sky starts to color. The sailors who are free take a breather. Some lean on the rail at the forecastle, looking out at the sea with absent gazes, perhaps thinking of loved ones or of their grog due soon. Others busy themselves with personal tasks, very similar to the post-dinner lull, actually. One man has broken out a fishing line and is attempting to trawl it over the side, hoping maybe to catch a fish in these rich waters. A couple of your messmates start a quiet game of dice against an upturned bucket, gambling a few coins, or perhaps just buttons for fun. They rattle the dice and mutter friendly taunts at each other, but keep their voices low so as not to disturb the on-duty men. On the quarterdeck, an officer and the sailing master might be having a murmured conversation, perhaps sharing a joke themselves now that the day's serious work is winding down. Soon, the evening meal is prepared. Around 5 p.m., the process repeats. The cook has something for you to eat. Supper is usually the lighter meal, often just leftovers from midday served cold. Sure enough, tonight's supper is simply whatever beef wasn't finished at noon, now cooled and chopped, perhaps mixed with any remaining broth, or a bit of peas pudding. If little is left, maybe there's a bit of fish or cheese issued to make up for it. Often, 3 days a week, instead of meat, sailors get additional servings of peas or oatmeal or fish. And on certain days, in place of meat, they might have a serving of butter and cheese. The officer on watch has kept track of the ration days, so whatever tonight's allowance is, it's distributed. You line up once more with your mess. The sun is now low, and they've lit a few lanterns below decks for you all to see during supper. The space is dim and swaying gently as always. You and your fellows eat in relative quiet. By this hour, people are starting to feel pleasantly tired. The chatter from earlier has died down to soft murmurs. You chew on a bit of cold pork fat spread on a biscuit. Not the tastiest, but the fat gives you energy, and you know you need every calorie. Someone shares a story about a tavern back home, but it trails off as everyone focuses on eating. In truth, everyone is anticipating what usually comes after supper, the distribution of the second rum ration of the day, and then the leisure of the evening. When the sun finally touches the horizon, painting the sky in streaks of pink and orange, the crew makes ready for the coming night. The second dog watch is underway, but this is a special time, almost a wind-down period. The sails might be adjusted for nighttime running, often reefed if heavy winds are expected, or set fair if it's calm. As darkness approaches, the night watch crew begin preparing their gear, a warm jacket perhaps, or their mind for the long hours ahead. But for now, many are off duty and can relax a bit. On the gun deck or forecastle, A few sailors break out instruments if they have them. It's not uncommon for ships to have a fiddler or fifer among the crew. To help pass the time and keep up morale, sailors often sing or play music in the evenings. Tonight, one shipmate has his fiddle, a little worse for wear from the sea air, but still tuneful. He sits on a barrel and begins to quietly saw a simple melody. Another man, perhaps the ship's resident jokester, taps a rhythm on an upturned bucket. The tune is a gentle folk song, maybe a ballad that all of you know from home. The sound of the fiddle lilts through the dusk, giving the ship a touch of homely warmth. You find yourself humming along under your breath. A few others join in softly, singing a verse or two. It's nothing rowdy, more like a lullaby shared among friends. The song might be about a girl waiting back in Portsmouth, or about a sailor's life itself. The lyrics speak of longing for shore, of fair winds, or sometimes of the absurdities of shipboard life. These songs and sea shanties are the soundtrack of a sailor's life, and tonight they ease everyone's minds. Nearby, at the base of the main mast, a small group is engaged in a game of cards. 4 sailors squat in a circle, illuminated by a swaying lantern hung from a beam. They deal out tattered playing cards, perhaps a cherished deck someone brought from England, and play a round of all fours or lantaloo, or whatever simple gambling game they fancy. They keep their voices low, occasionally chuckling or swearing softly when someone cheats. A little pile of winnings, maybe a few copper coins or buttons or IOUs for rum rations, sits in the center. You watch for a moment from your seat. The camaraderie is evident as one man claps another on the shoulder for a clever play. Others prefer more solitary pastimes. Along the starboard side, one young sailor sits cross-legged, carefully carving a scrap of wood. He's fashioning a model of a ship, perhaps even a miniature of the very vessel you're on. With a knife and much patience, he whittles the hull, occasionally blowing away the wood shavings accumulating on his lap. It's delicate work, and he's completely absorbed in it. These carvings can become gifts for sweethearts or children back home, or sometimes just a way to pass the time and keep hands busy. Another sailor is practicing knots, as odd as that may sound after a day full of ropes, but some enjoy it. He has a short length of old rope, and is tying intricate knots, a monkey's fist, a Turk's head, then undoing them, then trying a fancy braid. It's both a skill exercise and a form of fidgeting to relax. Over by the galley, the ship's cook and his mates are cleaning up from supper. They bank the coals of the stove so it stays safely low overnight. A faint smell of burnt stew scrapings mixes with the other odors below deck. Sweat, tar, tobacco smoke, and the ever-present mustiness of old wood and salt. Strangely, you've grown accustomed to this bouquet. It smells like home on the ship. As the dusk deepens, some men spin yarns. There's always that one older sailor with a trove of tales. Some true, some wildly exaggerated. He might regale a few younger hands with the story of a monstrous wave he once saw, taller than the mainmast, or a battle he fought in years ago. In the flickering lantern light, he leans forward, eyes glinting, painting pictures of adventure. You catch bits of it as you sit nearby repairing a tear in your own shirt. It's a mellow story tonight, perhaps about a far-off port with endless grog and friendly locals, a sailor's paradise that probably exists only in his imagination. Still, the way he tells it, you can almost see the palm trees and feel the sand under your feet. His listeners murmur appreciatively or laugh quietly at the funny bits. Storytelling is a valued entertainment on these long voyages, and a bit of harmless fantasy keeps morale up. Meanwhile, the officers and perhaps any passengers might be in the great cabin or wardroom, having their own supper and leisure. They often dine a little better, maybe some preserved wine or a private stash of brandy for the captain, and slightly fresher food reserved for them. They could be chatting about navigation, writing in journals, or reading by lamp glow. If this is an exploration ship, an officer might be jotting notes about the weather, sea conditions, or any wildlife observed. If any gentlemen naturalists are aboard, they might be preserving plant specimens or sketching an exotic bird seen flying past at sunset. But for you, a common sailor, those highbrow activities aren't your concern, though sometimes you're curious what the learned folk do in their spare time. You've heard of sailors who even try their hand at drawing or keeping diaries, inspired by the officers, but most of your mates are content with dice and songs. By now, the daylight is almost gone. Outside, the last fiery red of sunset is fading to purple and deep blue. The first stars emerge overhead, twinkling in the clear night sky. The helmsman keeps the ship on steady course, and the lookout is keen for any unexpected lights or hazards in the dark. The ship's lanterns, just a few, are lit but kept shielded so as not to spoil night vision on deck or give away position to any enemy that might be lurking. The great ship's bell strikes 8 bells again at 8 p.m, announcing the end of the dog watches and the start of the first night watch. For many of the crew, possibly you included, this means it's time for sleep at last. For the other half, duty continues through the night, rotating as always. Let's assume tonight you are lucky. Your watch was on duty for the dog watches, and now you are off until the middle of the night. That means you get to sleep from about 8 p.m. until midnight, perhaps before you might be called for a later watch. 4 solid hours of rest, not bad. The bosun's whistle blows, and the order pipe down echoes, the traditional signal that it's time for lights out and quiet below decks. The various murmured conversations quickly wind up. The dice game concludes with one fellow groaning in mock defeat as he hands over a token to the winner. The fiddler tucks his instrument safely away in its sack. The storytellers wrap up their yarns. And that's a tale for another night, lads. With a few pats on the back and subdued chuckles, the groups disperse. Those who are going on duty now head up to relieve their mates on deck. You bid good night to a friend who's headed topside to stand first watch in the cool night. Keep her steady, you say amiably. He grins. Aye, sleep well. I'll call you at middle watch. You move to where your hammock is stored. Earlier in the day, all hammocks were neatly stowed. Now the order is given to hang hammocks again for the night. You pull yours from the netting and find your assigned space below decks. Iron hooks line the beams, spaced close. Each sailor has a spot barely 2 feet from the next. You hook the clew of your hammock onto the rings, first one end, then the other, stretching it taut. This familiar canvas sling has been your bed for the voyage, a simple piece of heavy canvas about 6 feet by 3 feet, gathered with ropes at the ends. As you climb in, you can't help but sigh with relief. The day's labors weigh on you pleasantly, and your body is ready to surrender to the hammock's gentle embrace. One trick you've learned, sleeping in a hammock at sea, is actually very comfortable once you get used to it. The hammock rocks with the motion of the ship, keeping you snugly balanced even if the ship pitches. No fear of rolling off onto the floor. The sides of the canvas naturally wrap a bit around you like a cocoon. This has saved many a sailor in rough weather from being tossed out and injured. You wiggle a bit to find the right position, perhaps diagonally, which is flatter for the back. Your hammock creaks softly as it takes your weight. Ah, there it is. You feel almost weightless as it sways. Around you, in the 'tween decks, dozens of other sailors are doing the same. It's a bit of a process. Some men are shorter or taller, and you hear a friendly jibe. Who's got their hammock strung too low? You'll be on the deck by midnight, Tom. And another voice. I always set mine high. Keeps the rats from nibbling my toes. Good-natured laughter follows. Indeed, there are sometimes rats scurrying about at night. The ship has its share of vermin, but the ship's cat we met earlier takes care of many. And frankly, you're usually too deep in sleep to care, unless one literally runs across you. In your mind, you quickly double-check that you secured any loose food or crumbs in your sea chest. No need to invite whiskered visitors. One by one, the lanterns are dimmed to near darkness. Only a very faint glow remains, perhaps a single hanging lamp left on, as a night light in case of emergency. The wooden hull groans gently now and then as the temperature difference of night settles in. Above, you can hear the muted footsteps of the watch on deck, and an occasional call or the ting of the bell marking time. The ship continues its journey through the dark sea, but down here, it's as if you're in a different world, a world of quiet and slumber. Your hammock rocks slightly with a calming rhythm. The sounds of the ocean and ship become a lullaby, the water lapping against the hull, a soft hiss as a small wave passes, the distant hum of wind in the rigging, almost like a low whistle, the occasional flap of a sail adjusting, or a gentle thump as the ship shifts and something settles in place. These are comforting sounds to you now. They mean everything is as it should be. All is well. You recall the saying that often accompanies the 8 bells. In fact, at the end of each watch, it's tradition for the lookout or officer to call out, 8 bells and all's well. Hearing that phrase in memory, you smile. Yes, all's well. You close your eyes. The darkness behind your eyelids is warm and safe. In your mind's eye, you might still see the afterimage of starry skies above, or the gentle waves glowing with plankton perhaps. Maybe you're thinking of home for a moment, of the loved ones you miss. perhaps you whisper a quiet prayer or thought to yourself, as many sailors do at day's end, thankful for a peaceful day and asking for another tomorrow. Some ships have an official prayer or hymn at sunset, but on this easy day, it was informal. Regardless, in your heart you find a moment of gratitude. Thank you for this calm day. Let there be another. Your body grows heavier in the hammock, every muscle relaxing now. Oh, how you've earned this rest. The canvas conforms around you, supporting your tired back and limbs. A gentle, cool breeze finds its way through the hatch, providing fresh night air that drifts across your face. It's like nature's own sleeping draft. The murmurs in the darkness fade as one by one your shipmates fall asleep too. You hear a snore starting up from someone already in deep slumber. A funny little snort that in the past might have made you chuckle, but now it's just part of the background. Overhead, through a gap, you catch a glimpse of the night sky, maybe through the gunport or hatch, if it's open. There are brilliant stars out tonight, the Milky Way splashed across the heavens. You recall nights when you stared at those stars in wonder during your lookout duty, identifying constellations like Orion or the North Star which you use for navigation. At this moment though, the stars are like comforting distant candles watching over you. A thought crosses your drowsy mind. Those same stars shine on your home in England. Loved ones might look up and see the same sky. In a way it connects you despite the great distance. This thought soothes you further. From high above comes the faint sound of the ship's bell again. One bell, two bells. It's now 9 p.m. The watch officer has struck the bells and called the time. You barely register it. It's a familiar signal that time is passing as it should. The bell's tone is actually quite melodic when heard from your hammock, a distant ding-ding that seems to lull you more, marking the intervals of the night. You know that should anything happen, the watch will alert you, but likely it will be an uneventful night. Perhaps a gentle rolling if the wind changes. Perhaps even the moon will rise later, shining silver through the hatch, casting lattice shadows of the ropes on the deck. All these things happen quietly as you drift on the edge of sleep. Your breathing slows and deepens. The hammock rocks back and forth, in time with the slow breathing of the ship in the waves. It's almost like being a baby in a cradle, rocked by a caring hand. The timbers creak a lullaby. Somewhere, a few hammocks over, a man coughs lightly then settles. Another one mutters in his sleep about hauling a line. Amusingly, some sailors even give commands in their dreams. You smile faintly, eyes closed, nearly dreaming yourself. Your last conscious thought is a simple, contented one. This was an ordinary day, a day of hard work, simple food, camaraderie, and nature's beauty. Nothing dramatic happened, and that is perfectly fine by you. A sailor's life can be full of storms and dangers, but not today. Today was calm, productive, even pleasant in its routines. As you sink into sleep, you feel grateful for the boring, blessed normalcy of this day. Tomorrow will likely be much the same. Scrub the decks, haul the lines, eat the salt pork, watch the sun and stars, and you're okay with that. There's a comfort in the routine, in knowing what each hour brings. It's the rhythm of the sea, and you are in tune with it now. And so, in your gently swaying hammock on this quiet night in the 17th century, you finally let go. The ship carries on through the dark water, but you are at peace, wrapped in your blanket of sleep. The stars above continue to wheel slowly in the sky. The ship's bell occasionally chimes the passing half hours, growing ever more distant to your ears as you slip into a deep slumber. The sounds of the ship become dreams. Maybe you dream of waves lapping on a beach, or the creaking of an old oak tree instead of a mast. Your breathing matches the slow cadence of the ship's rocking. There is no worry in your mind, only the gentle thought that you are safe, here among your comrades and under nature's watchful eye. All is well, you murmur in your sleep, perhaps echoing the watchman's call, and all is indeed well. On this calm night at sea, you, a tired 17th century sailor, drift into restful sleep. Your hammock sways, the ship whispers, and the vast sky watches over you. May your dreams be as gentle as the rolling waves, and may you awake with the sunrise to another peaceful day aboard the ship. For now, the day's work is done. Your eyes are closed, and sleep embraces you like the softest of waves. Good night, sailor. Let the boring history of this ordinary day lull you into the deepest, most restorative slumber, as the ocean carries you onward. Sweet dreams.